So here's how you're gonna get the Creative Cloud if you don't have it yet. You go here to adobe.com and there's a free trial, but it's only, how long is the free trial? 14-day free trial.
7 days.
Is it 7? It says 14 here.
Oh,
Maybe it changed. It used to be 7 days, I remember. I guess they extended it. Comes with extra features available only to business customers. I don't know what that means. Maybe I'm on the wrong page. Maybe this is the wrong subscription. Let's click here. View plans and pricing. That's where we should be. Okay, so maybe we were on the business plan. That's why it looks different. We're gonna go to students and teachers. That's us. 19.99 a month. It's been that price for a while. They haven't really raised it, so that's good. Um, so it comes with Creative Cloud, all apps, which are the ones that I showed you. What happened to this thing? Yeah, so all these. There are some others that are not included, like available by request. There's the Substance 3D stuff. I don't know why that's not included. I guess, I don't know. It's 3D. It's more advanced. Along with the apps, you also have access to Adobe fonts, which is great. You get a lot more fonts than what comes on your computer. To see those fonts, we have to click on, let's go to the home. Mm, Where are the fonts? Oh, there. You have to click here, fonts, and yeah, you have all these fonts. You could activate them. The nice thing about this is even if you haven't downloaded the fonts, let's say I'm just gonna type in, actually, let's just grab the type tool and just click here. Hey, where's the lorem ipsum? I was hoping it would give me some lorem ipsum. Probably there. There it is. Okay. Alright, so this font that I'm using right now, if I want to know what font it is, if I click on the type tool and I highlight this, I can see up here, this is called the control panel. And usually it has uh, options related to whatever tool and object you have selected. So since I have the type tool selected and I've got some text selected, it's giving me some type options. There's my font. It's called, well, it's called Poppins, extra bold, 75 points, crisp, and there's the color. You might be confused by how to change the color of your text because there's also your swatches here, your foreground and background color. That's for if you grab the paintbrush, that's for the paintbrush. When you're working with text, the color is going to be picked from here. Okay. You can also access these options that you see here, the type options. If you click this button here, toggle character and paragraph panels, this should pop open these guys here. They're already there. I think they're already hanging out here. There's the character panel, there's the paragraph panel. Clicking this just opens them up. And but they might not always be there. Like if I click here and say close, it's not there anymore. It'll pop up again if I do that, and it'll remain there. Or you can go to window and then find it through here. It'll be under window and character or window paragraph. Okay, and then you could rearrange it. I prefer having everything here in a single column. You can grab them from the top and drag them wherever you want. You can make this bigger and smaller. You can grab the whole collection of panels here and drag it out and have it floating, place it somewhere else if you need to. But in case you do mess it up and you're like, I created a mess, just go to right here. Oops, where is it? Click this button here all the way on the right next to the light bulb, and you'll see different basically different layouts for your tools and panels. Right now we're on essentials, but I messed it up, so I'm going to say reset essentials. And there, it reset it back to the default. You could also go to Window Workspace and pick it from here. So that's same thing as Window Workspace. It brings you the same options as that little button up in the top right corner. So I like to keep it on Essentials. You could also create your own. Let's say you move things around to how you like it. Say do this. Let's minimize that. Drag this over here and this one here. Maybe I like it like this. Maybe I also like having my character panel included. So I'll go to Window, Character, and just place that there. And then if I'm happy with that, also happy with having my tools the way they are, I'll just go to Window, Workspace, and then New Workspace. And I'll call it David. Panel locations will be saved in this workspace. Keyboard shortcuts, menus, and toolbars are optional. So looks like it's only going to save the panel locations, which are these guys. Keyboard shortcuts, menus, and toolbar. Toolbar probably being this one. You could check it if you also want to save that in this new workspace. Okay, so now if I go to click that button, a new option is available, David, instead of essentials. Let's reset essentials. I can pick this one or pick it from here. Check out the core tools. Core tools is kind of new. I didn't notice that one before. I still prefer this way. Right, and you could also close this thing, the floating contextual toolbar, taskbar. I mean, it doesn't hurt to, I'm not used to it, so sometimes I get annoyed by it and I close it. But I'll try to keep it floating around because it's useful. Contextual taskbar. It based on what you're working on or what you're doing, it'll give you some options that you might want to use. So in this case, give me some text options. Anyways, back to the fonts. So I've got a bunch of fonts here. These are already on my computer, I think. Yeah, these are the ones that I've got installed on my computer. Probably have more than you because I install fonts all the time. Um, but if you want to see more, if you want to see those Adobe fonts that we haven't downloaded yet, you could click here where it says show Adobe fonts. Wait, sorry, this one just filters the Adobe fonts. It doesn't show you the ones that you haven't downloaded yet. Okay, so to actually see the ones that you haven't downloaded, you want to open the actual character panel and click back. Oh no, you gotta click more font. I was looking for that. I couldn't see it. So it says your fonts and then more fonts. Your fonts are the ones you already have. More fonts, the ones that you can have. So what's nice is you can preview them. It's a little slow because it has to, make a request to find the font and show you the preview. So it's kind of slow, but you just check out the different fonts and it previews it right here. So if you see something you like, you just simply click on it and it activates. So and we could also, filter. Let's go for. I'll keep it on sans serif font and find something that I like. Let's say I like. And none of these are really unique looking. Okay, that one kind of looked unique. Where was it? This one. Aglet Sans. Aglet Sans. I'll click on that one and activate it. So now I can use this font. And I've only got extra light selected, so it's only showing me extra light. So maybe I should click this again and use the little drop down and pick, maybe I want the regular as well. I'll click that. So now I could pick extra light or regular. You could also download these because they're not actually installed on my computer. If I close Photoshop and I open it again and I have this font selected for something in my composition, it'll have to load it again. So it'll probably show up with like a pink background until it loads the font. There's supposed to be a little download button. Maybe that's just for Adobe Illustrator. Anyways, yeah, you have Adobe fonts available, which is cool. Oh, here you go. You could install it from here. So, I mean, what was the one I was using? Aglet Sans. Search for it here. Aglet Sans. Let's see if it already got installed. It didn't, so that's why it says add font. I want to add, if you want to get all of them, because there's a lot of them, there's extra light italic, sans, or just light italic, regular, all the way, all these different bold, ultra bold, black. You don't want to do them all one by one. You could just click add family and all of them will get added. Right, and then it says manage fonts in the Creative Cloud, install fonts for use across other apps. Um, just click OK. Now they're all available as you can see. Right. Okay, let's put a little video. There's a little introduction to Photoshop if you wanna. I think I have to. I forgot where that video popped up. Let me close this. Go to learn more. Maybe not here. There was like a quick summary of Photoshop video. I forgot where I saw it. Anyways, we can watch this. What's new in Photoshop? Oh, but it shows up in this little window. So this is something more you might want to just explore it on your own. When you have time, just click around, check out all these different things. But basically, what's new is a lot of AI tools. Like you can expand this, and then if you want like a little bit longer, you could select the area that you want to extend. And you could do things like generative fill. And if you don't enter anything, you could put in something here like what do you want to see there, or leave it blank and it'll just extend the image. It'll also give you three different options. Alright, so I just extended it, but in case I didn't like that, there's a couple other versions. But anyways, that's all the new fancy stuff. Let's focus more on the core tools in Photoshop. And let me just explain what Photoshop is. Because Photoshop is Adobe's probably most popular product. And let's start from like brand new. When I just show you this, you have the option to create a new file, open a file. You can click learn if you want to do some of these tutorials. Click home. It'll show you your most recent stuff and your welcome screen here. Your files, these will be cloud documents. I guess I don't have any, so nothing there. Shared with you is if anyone shared anything. Lightroom photos. Lightroom is an app, another Adobe app for managing photos. I haven't really used it much, but I did have a student that was like a photographer. I know photographers like to use Lightroom. Helps you organize your images and do quick lighting effects. So we'll go to new file, and here we can see we got recent, we got saved, photo, print, art, illustration, web, mobile, and film and video. Okay, because you could use Photoshop for anything. Um, Photoshop is a raster image editing software. So a raster image is basically an image made out of pixels. So I'm gonna choose a default. Let's do, well, I have a recent. You might not have a recent, but under recent I have 1920 by 1080, but that's probably also under web. It is 1920 by 1080 web large. Go with that one. So it gives me this artboard, 1920 by 1080. The most important panel you'll probably need to get used to is the layers panel. It's going to be on the right side here. If it's not there, go to Window, Layers. The Layers panel, if I just pull it out here for you, and let me try to zoom into that. You could set your preferences if you think the buttons and everything is too small in Photoshop. You can go to Edit, Preferences. If you're on a Mac, I think it's Photoshop Preferences. It might not be under Edit if you're on a Mac. But look for Preferences, and then if you want to make things bigger, you could click on, it doesn't matter which one you click on here. In the end, it's going to open up the same window, and then it'll have tabs, so you could pick whatever other one here. But the one we're looking for is, let's see, probably be interface. Yeah, and then in the preferences interface tab, you can see options for UI font size. You can make it larger if you want. And UI scaling, you can do 200% instead of 100%. UI is user interface. So if I do UI scaling 200%, and then I'll make the font size, I think small was the default. I'll change it to medium. Actually, let me click cancel. Let me double check what is the default. Yeah, it's small. So by default, UI font size is small. I'll change it to medium, and UI scaling, instead of auto, I'll do 200%. The thing is, if you do change the preferences, it's gonna need you to restart Photoshop to see the changes. So nothing's really different now. If I close this and open up Photoshop again, it still looks the same. Let's actually open a project to make sure. Yeah, it looks the same. Nothing changed. Did I not save it? Edit preferences, interface. I mean, it is set to medium. Oh, changes will take effect next time you start Photoshop. But I did. Anyway, it should be bigger. But maybe I didn't restart it. Maybe I restarted it too fast. But whatever. The layers panel is important because that's where you create all your layers, and it's also where you can see your artboards. Artboards are also a new thing to Photoshop. It didn't used to have artboards. Uh, Personally, I don't like using artboard. This is an artboard. You can create multiple artboards, but what's the point? Just create a new file. Artboards are more useful, I think, in Adobe Illustrator, but they tried to bring it to Photoshop, and I'm having a hard time really finding use for them. So when you're creating a new document, it will have an option here for artboards. Usually I'll keep that unchecked. I really don't need to use artboards. Also clears up my layers panel. Don't need to see that. Okay, so my layers panel, which again disappeared because I closed it, I'll just reset my workspace and it's back. The first layer that you'll see in there usually when you create a new document is going to be this white layer. It's going to be locked, so if you try to like move it, it'll give you this message, says current layer is a background layer, cannot move a background layer or change its stacking order, blending mode, or opacity. However, you can convert it to a normal layer and then change any of these attributes. So you could, just if you wanted to, you could convert it to a normal layer or just keep it as your background layer and click the little plus sign in your layers panel to create a new layer. And then this new layer will be an empty layer. If you click the eye next to the background layer, it'll hide it. Then all you'll see is this checkerboard. The checkerboard just means there's nothing there. So we're looking at layer 1 right now, which has nothing on it, but I'll just paint something on it. Okay, so now I have two layers. I've got the background layer and I've got this other layer on top of it. So it's important to understand layers because you're not going to be working on a single layer ever. Usually you're doing multiple layers, else you wouldn't need something like Photoshop if you're not going to need layers. Okay, so I've got two layers. Top layer just has this paintbrush mark, and if you're wondering Why is my brush looking like this? It looks like a bunch of little circles instead of a smooth paint. That's probably because my brush is messed up. It's currently, we got the spacing set at 25%. So your brush, everything's gonna have options. Every tool here will have options that you can mess with, either by, I was gonna say double clicking, but I guess never mind. Can't double click these. It'll be up here. So when I select the brush tool, I can pick the brush size, the hardness. So this is a soft brush. This is a hard brush. This is in between. Right? You could soften your brushes, make them harder. It should be solid black, but it's a little bit transparent. It's gray looking. So another thing you might want, it's kind of like it's like spraying. So it's not 100% opaque or solid when I first click. I have to sort of click and go over it a bunch of times, go up and down, then it turns black. If you don't want it to be like that, you can control the flow. Right now it's at 55%. Right, bring that up to 100%. You can see it's more solid black right from the get-go. So if I increase the flow to 100%, I get sort of better looking brush here. But if I leave that at 55%, and let's say we bring the hardness up to 100, I'm going to bring the hardness up to 100 and bring the flow to 100 as well. Okay, so with the flow to 100, we still have like this bumpy looking brush. You could kind of see the individual circles. It's not very smooth. That's controlled by the spacing. So you want to control the spacing, you have to click this button here, which is the brush settings panel, which I guess we don't have it here. Brush settings. You can go to window, brush settings, and pop it up, and you can keep it here if you want. But you probably don't need to bring that panel out there because anytime you open the brush tool, it'll be up here. So you just open it that way. But if you do open the brush settings, you'll see down here there's spacing. Okay, and by default looks like it's at 25%. You might be tempted to bring this down to 0 or 1. I guess the lowest is 1. The problem with doing 1% is it's smooth, but I don't know. I guess do it. If you have a slow computer, it'll be a problem. Looks like it's fine on my computer. On a slower computer, it might lag if you try to use a brush with the spacing set really low. So I don't know. I'll go somewhere between 25 and 1. Let's go like 15%. Okay, so it's a little smoother, but it's good enough. It's definitely better than it was before, right? The first couple strokes you could still see individual circles, but not as bad as before, even with the flow at 55%. But anyways, you're rarely gonna paint like this, so I don't even know why I'm stressing this so much. But I mean, it's good to know brush settings. It'll come up again when you're creating like your own custom brushes. Maybe you want to paint some grass or trees or something. You create your own tree brush. You'll want to play with the spacing. Okay, so layers panel is important. Brush tool, also important, probably most commonly used um, tool from here, other than the selection tools and the move tool. So the move tool is the very first tool you have. Right clicking or clicking and holding on it will show you what's underneath, which is the artboard tool. We don't need the artboard tool because we're not gonna create new artboards or anything. Then you have the rectangular selection tool, elliptical selection or marquee tool, single row, single column. I don't know what the point of these two are. Single row, single column. Like it selects the whole, like a whole single row of pixels, which is weird. Not sure why you would need that. There you go. This is what a raster image is made out of. Little pixels. Okay, so the rectangular marquee and the elliptical marquee, you're gonna use those to make rectangular selections and elliptical selections. If you hold shift when you're making a selection, you'll you'll make a square selection. If you hold shift with the circle or elliptical marquee tool, you'll get a perfect circle selection. Let me see if I have. Let me grab the old lesson files from CS6 because there's still some useful lesson files in there. I wonder if I already have them downloaded somewhere. Let's see, Photoshop. I guess not. I don't have the lesson files already downloaded. Anyways, I'll find something else that requires a circle selection. Let's go to one of our favorite stock image websites on Splash and search Porsche. And just copy this image and paste it here. And paste it. I don't know why I didn't paste the first time. By the way, when you make a copy, when you copy anything, do a copy image and you have your image on your clipboard, if you go to File New, under Recent, it'll show Clipboard, and that will be exactly the size of the object that you just copied. So if I click that and say Create, and I'll be able to paste this image in here, and it'll be exactly the size that it's supposed to be. Dragging it into my 1920 by 1080 image shows me that it's actually a little bit larger than my artboard. That's fine. I'll do edit free transform, just scale it to fit better in here. Okay, so with the elliptical marquee tool, you might do things like select a round object like the lights on this guy. Now it's not a perfect circle, so it's a little difficult to select with this tool, but there are shortcuts that you can use. So try to find an image with something round that can be selected. Maybe there's another Porsche. Or maybe what other car has really round headlights? Volkswagen. Again, I'll grab the clipboard size and paste it in here. Cool. So I want to make a round selection, a circle selection. I'll hold shift and make a selection around this light bulb. And then when you're making selections, it's kind of tricky because you might not. The way it works is you're gonna go from one corner to the other corner. So to accurately select this, I would have to know basically the intersection of this and this. This is called your rulers. You could click your rulers and drag out guidelines. So if I wanted to select this perfectly, I would have to go from this corner, click, drag all the way to this corner. But you're not going to always want to drag out these guidelines. So instead, when you're doing this, and you see that, oh, you're not really perfectly there, you could hold the space bar while you're making your selection, and also hold shift to keep it a perfect circle. But if you press the space bar, you're going to be able to move your selection. See, I can move it. When I got that perfectly selected, I'll I'll go to image adjustments. Let's do a curves adjustment. So curves is just, you got all these adjustments that you can do: brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure. And curves is gonna mess with the dark and light values. You see, it's gonna give you this graph, and basically if I pull up from this side, I'll make it brighter. If I go down, I'll make it darker. If you do an S curve by dragging that up and clicking this and dragging it down, you'll increase the contrast. So the darks get darker, the brights get brighter. And you could click and drag down to get rid of that point that you added. Um, but I'm just gonna brighten this a little bit with the curves, like that. Or you might want to make a circle selection like this. Hold the space bar to adjust it if you need to. Another thing you can do, if you want to adjust your selection, like on this one, when I select this, the headlight on this is not a perfect circle. So I'll just do my best to just select the left side at least. But another thing you can do to fix your selection is you can go to select, transform selection, and then I could rotate it, or I can hold shift to scale it from one side, and then maybe rotate it a little bit. And then adjust it till it fits the light perfectly. And then when I'm happy with that, I can hit the check mark or press enter. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll say Image adjustments, curves. Make that brighter. Click OK. Alright, back to this one. Um, might want to select this Volkswagen logo and just maybe do something like image, um, not image. Where was the option to create a brush? Edit, edit, and define brush preset. Let's say call this VW. Click OK. Now I've got my own Volkswagen brush. Oh, let's do. When you have a selection, so since this is selected right now, if I try to paint, nothing happens. I've got black selected for my fill color. Trying to paint, nothing's happening. That's because this is selected. I can only paint inside that area. So I have to do select, deselect. And now I can paint elsewhere. And here's where you might want to mess with the spacing. If we went back to here and increase the spacing, maybe I'm doing some thing here where I want to, I don't know, put Volkswagen logo everywhere, mess with the spacing. You could also, if you want to make your brush bigger and smaller, it might be annoying to always have to come here and increase the size this way. What I like to do is use the keyboard shortcut, which is the left and the right bracket on your keyboard. So basically this and those, this one will make it smaller, this one will make it bigger. So I can increase the font size or the brush size. Increase the flow. Get a big solid. That's not very solid, is it? Anyway, I'm just messing around. So yeah, rectangular marquee, elliptical marquee. They're gonna have options. You can do select transform selection if you need to transform your selection. When you have an object selected, you can only paint within that object, within that selection. You can't paint elsewhere. Holding shift constrains the width and the height so that it remains a perfect circle. If you let go of shift, you can do an oval. Same with the square. If you hold spacebar while you're dragging to create your selection, you can move it. You can also do things like feather your selection. So say I select this area, I fill it with red. Let me just switch back to a normal brush. Let's go to our this little drop down from here and just pick a general hard round brush. Just fill that in. So that's a normal selection with 0 feather. So feather is set to 0. But if I do another one here, actually I think I had to change the feather before I do that. Let's say I change the feather to 20 pixels and then I make a selection. If I paint in there, that's a feathered selection. See, the corners got rounded and the edges got um, faded. Okay, so not a good idea if you are going to do stuff like paint over an image to paint directly on that layer. This square, for example, I painted it directly on the Porsche layer. So it's better you create a new layer and then paint on that new layer instead of directly on the Porsche. That way you can always hide what you did or move it around. If you paint directly on this layer, then you can't really move that smudge anymore. If I, like, say I use the magic wand to select that and I move it, then I've cut a hole in the picture because I painted directly on that layer. Always paint on a new layer. So that way you can move it without harming the original image. Same with the things that I did earlier. The adjustment that I added to this, I went to image adjustments and I did curves. I'm just doing that to demonstrate the selection tool, but it's better you do, instead of image adjustments curves, it's better you do layer new um, where is it, adjustment layers, or maybe it's not under new, it's layer new adjustment layer, and then you could do curves from here. That way I can still do this, but just like the brush on a new layer, the adjustment is also on a new layer, so I can hide it or move it. You can also create adjustment layers right here, this button. So if I click this and say new curves adjustment, see it added this new adjustment layer on top of the original image. I can click on that and adjust the layer. Now right now it's doing the whole picture, but if I wanted I could make a selection of just the area that I need, which would be this guy. And this one. The thing is, you can't really. If I, maybe I can. Yeah, I could move that separate, I guess. So make this selection. Cool. So if you do have a selection like this, and then you create a adjustment layer, like the curves, you click here to adjust, make the adjustment. It'll only affect the areas that you had selected, because when you have a selection and you create that adjustment layer, it creates this layer mask automatically for you. Now the original one I did doesn't have the layer mask, so everything gets brightened, but this one has the layer mask, so only that area gets brightened. I mean, they both have layer masks technically. This one also has it, but this one's is black, this one's is white. Black means um, it's basically erased in those areas. Technically, it's not all black. There's going to be tiny two little dots in there somewhere. It's just it's too small to actually see. But there would be white circles in the black where the lights are. I don't know what I just did. Oh, okay. So, um, if I make that selection again, select, reselect. Okay. If you did make a recent selection, you can always do select, reselect, and it'll select what you last had selected. So, if I already created the layer mask, the adjustment layer, and I only want to affect the circle areas that I have selected, I can um, basically paint, let's see, grab the paint bucket, switch your foreground color to pure black, and then select that layer mask that's white and just fill it with black. Now this doesn't affect anything because the whole layer mask is black. But if I select, reselect, and I paint these areas white, oops, make sure you paint white on the actual layer mask, not the layer itself. Then it's kind of the same thing as if I had created that thing selected. So it's only affecting the areas that I painted white. Oops. Again, make sure you're painting this thing white. The adjustment layers layer mask. It's going to be the thing to the right. So only the areas that I paint white in that layer mask are going to be affected by this adjustment. So go here, make it more obvious. You can see only the areas that I painted are affected by it. We'll try a couple more examples, but let's take a break for now because it's already 8:04. And who's that? Archie? Anyone else joined that I didn't catch when I was taking attendance? Let me pause this recording. Cool. Let's take a more clear look at the workspace. And I'm not sure why it's not getting bigger. I did preferences, interface, font size, medium, UI scaling 200. Maybe there's a different area I can go to. Workspace, general. Nope, I think that was the only place we could really mess with the scale. Anyways, okay, let's go back. So, take a screenshot. Do you guys know how to take a screenshot of your monitor? It's gonna be different if you're on Windows or Mac. On Windows, you can press print screen. I'll just take a screenshot of your whole monitor. Although I guess things have changed. Now when you press print screen, it brings up a little window. And then you can click snip and choose the area. Wait, what am I doing? Just like trying to record the screen or something. Control V. Oh, okay. I guess when I click the camera, so when you press print screen, this is new. I haven't pressed print screen in a long time. So turns out you could do snip, or you could record your screen. But yeah, it also lets you choose an area. But when you paste, you'll you'll be pasting an image of what you took a screenshot of. But you can also press um, Control Window S. Never mind, that's something else. No thanks. Don't do Control Window S. It's Control Shift S. Nope, that's save. Shift Window S. No, it can't be that. Oh, it is that. Shift Window S. Okay, that's the one. That also lets you take a screenshot. You drag a selection around the area you want to print. So if I do Control or Shift Window S, this pops up again. It's the same thing. I guess since they made an update on the print screen, there's no need for Shift Control S or whatever. Just press print screen, take a screenshot, paste it.
neck and injection site pain, and headache. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history. Muscle or nerve conditions like ALS, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert
If you
disease
have the
syndrome,
old
and medicines like
2021
botulinum
version
toxins,
of
which may
Photoshop,
increase the risk of serious side
you're
effects.
just gonna be missing some of
Chronic
the
migraine may still
AI
keep you
stuff,
from
I
being
think.
there. Ask your doctor about
I'm gonna mute.
Botox today.
Is it
Learn how
Danny?
AbbVie
I'm
can
gonna
help you
mute you
save.
because it's kind of loud. Okay. All right. So now that I've taken a screenshot, I can zoom in. That's the whole reason I wanted to do that. Um, so up here at the very top, what you see here, your file menu. So your typical file menu that you have on any application. Let me set that feather back to 0. It's got the green bar around it because right now I'm not recording, I'm sharing my screen on Zoom, so that's what that green bar is. But here file, you can save, export. Saving will save your Photoshop file in PSD format, but you can also choose TIFF and Photoshop large document format. I think that's for if you're going to be working in print and in large size like a billboard or something, you might want to do PSB. But in general, that's just for saving your file. You're probably never going to go there. You just save your file and you're done. It's the exports that you need to worry more about, because when you're done editing your file and you want to save it as a JPEG or a GIF, you're going to want to do export, and that's going to be here under file. Okay, and you're going to have several options. There's quick export as a GIF. This will just let you save a GIF, GIF. You also have export as. We'll go over all these options later, but basically lets you choose PNG, JPEG, GIF, or SVG, which is strange that it lets you save an SVG now. That's kind of new. I didn't notice that. Okay. It's strange because SVG is not a raster image format. It's a vector format, which is not really native to Photoshop. That's why it's strange. We also have save for web. This is what the older versions of Photoshop had. Where did it go? File, export, save for web. Okay, it's sorry, my Photoshop has been buggy. It's supposed to pop up a little window for save for web. It's not doing it. Let me close it and open it again. Hopefully it doesn't keep doing that. Let's create a new file again. Okay, so file, export, save for web, legacy. There we go. Okay, I thought I was gonna do it again. This window pops up. Um, this lets you also choose JPEG, PNG, GIF, but this one also lets you save like an animated GIF if you need to. Also lets you see the file size and compare the original to the optimized version. We'll go over that later. Um, what else? Besides saving and exporting and importing, there's some other cool things in here like automating. When you need to do something to multiple files, you don't want to do it one by one. There's automate batch options. We'll maybe look at that in the future, but that's your file menu. And then under edit, you'll have things like edit copy, edit paste, undo, redo. Your new image generation stuff will be here too. If you want to generate an image or you do generative fill. A lot of the editing, free transform, this, that, it's all going to be under edit. So you're going to go into edit often, I think. Let me go back to Unsplash because it's more useful if we have something to work with here. Just copy this image, paste. It's probably AI generated. See, what I just did right now is not a good idea in general to, when you paste an image and it's smaller than your artboard, that means this image itself is not as big, it's not as high resolution as my file right now that I have it set to. Right now my image size is 1920 by 1080, but when I copied this image, I think I copied it at a little bit smaller. Actually, no, it looks pretty decent size. Copy image, file new. If we go to the clipboard, it'll tell me how big that actually was. It's 1932 by 1087. Anyways, if I paste that in here, this time it gave me a larger version for whatever reason. Let's just go with the larger image. So I'll just place that there. Okay, so free transform is something I'll use a lot if I need to scale an image. It used to be in older versions, so if you have 2021 version of Photoshop, the way you scale things might be different. Nowadays, if you're scaling an image, by default it'll keep the shape. It's not letting me squish it and stretch it. If I want to squish it and stretch it, I have to hold shift. But it used to be the opposite in the older version. Before it would squish and stretch, and then you would have to hold shift to keep it straight. Now it just keeps it straight by default. But edit free transform will let you scale, rotate, and Hold shift if you want to scale it a little bit differently. You can also hold shift when you're rotating and it'll constrain to 45-degree angle. So if I'm rotating without holding shift, it's more smooth. If I hold shift, it sticks to like 45-degree, or I guess it's not 45 degrees anymore. It's 15-degree angles it sticks to. And when you do a transform with the free transform tool, you can either accept the transform you did or reject it or cancel it. If you have the selection tool, there's a option up here in the control panel that you'll see that says show transform controls. If you check that, then by default you'll be able to free transform things. But usually I keep that unchecked. I just, if I need to transform something, I'll just do edit free transform. Or you could be more specific and do a transform, scale, rotate, skew, distort, or whatever. So there's going to be other more advanced ways to distort things, like, for example, perspective, or puppet warp. Um, where is puppet? Oh, there it is. Puppet warp is up here. Uh, that's if you wanna use these like points that you can drop to scale things. This is more for if we had a figure and we're trying to make it like a guy move his arm up and down or something. Might want to use puppet warp. We don't really use it in this case. Maybe here on this guy. Edit puppet warp. Put little pins here where you want the guy to stay rigid. And then it's just not really great for a low resolution image though. Anyway, doesn't work great here. But uh, but you have those options: puppet warp, free transform. You can do warp. What else? This is also where I defined a brush pattern, a brush preset. Remember the Volkswagen logo I did? By selecting an object like this guy and saying edit, define brush preset, you can create a custom brush. Let's call this guy Astro, not Astro. Well, I can't spell. Is that how you spell astronaut? Anyways, select deselect, and you can see I've got an astronaut brush now. Which will show up in your brushes panel if you actually, where would it show up? I guess it's not in brushes, it's maybe under this tool, brush settings. You open this up, there it is. There's also the Volkswagen I did earlier. Okay, so not much else you need to know about the edit options. Okay, under image, you have your image mode. Right now we're working RGB. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. Any digital art that you're working on is going to be in RGB color mode. You can, grayscale will obviously be grayscale. It'll ask you when you're switching if you want to flatten the image or not. That means it'll get rid of the layers and merge them together. In general, you don't want to flatten things because you won't be able to edit it later. CMYK image mode is the other image mode that you might use, and that's if you're working in print. You can always switch between the two, but CMYK color, the reason why it's different is because printers don't use red, green, and blue. They print cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So it's supposed to give you more accurate preview of what the thing would look like if you work in CMYK. Also, if you're a pro and you just need more colors, you can switch to a 16-bit or 32 bits per channel. Basically gives you more fine tuning of the colors and the values. We'll work in 8 bits. We don't really need to fine tune that much. Um, so you also have the adjustments here. So these will give you all the different adjustments like the curves we did. Brightness, contrast levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, hue, saturation. Right? Hue saturation lets you shift the hue and the saturation, the lightness. So if you need to make adjustments like that, you've got the option there. But like I said earlier, I like to use adjustment layers instead. So everything you see here, image adjustments, you got all these options, brightness, contrast, all the way to equalize. Well, I guess they're not all here. We got the solid color gradient, um, brightness, contrast, invert, posterize, selective color. I guess it has everything from up here to here. Doesn't have the shadow, highlight, HDR toning, and the other stuff. But it's better to do it here because, again, the brightness, contrast, or let's do the hue saturation again. Cool thing about doing it this way is you're not permanently changing the image. You're creating a new layer that adds that effect. You can always turn it off or lower the opacity of that effect or just delete the effect. Auto tone, auto contrast, auto colored. Sometimes these help make your image pop more. So if, for example, let's try auto tone on this, see what happens. Yeah, it made the blues a little bit brighter, it looks like. Here's the before. Before, after. So just brightened it up a little bit. And what that does is it automatically applies some of these adjustments. Okay, Control Z, edit, undo. Control Shift Z, redo. You can see the shortcuts for those here. Edit, um, redo, Shift Control Z, undo, Control Z. In case you're wondering. Here you can also change your canvas size. So right now we can see that my canvas is 1920 by 1080 and my resolution is at 72 pixels per inch, which is what you need for digital work. For print you might want to bump that up to 300. You'll see the width and height also increased when I changed the resolution. Switch that back to 72. We'll look at image resizing later, but this is where you can check your image size and resize it. Okay, canvas size lets you change the canvas size. So if you change the canvas size and not the image size, you'll basically change the size of this canvas, but the image will stay whatever size it was. It won't scale or get smaller. So if you make the canvas smaller, you'll end up cropping the image. So if it's 1920 by 1080 and I make it 1080 by 1080, it's going to warn me that the canvas is smaller than some of the areas, so some clipping will occur. Luckily, it doesn't delete the areas that were clipped. You can still see them if you just move the layer. Right, you could also change the image rotation. You could duplicate the image. It'll create a new file. Basically, it'll open up a new tab here. I'm not going to do it. What else? We can... That's pretty much it. Okay, let's move on to layer. Layer, new, layer. Let's create a new layer. Same as clicking this button here, the little plus sign. Create a new layer mask. You can do that here, or you can select the layer and click this create a layer mask button. Little box with a hole in it. Okay, so basically all your layer options are there. If you want to merge your layers, you can do that here. Type, select. Okay, select, we can do select all, deselect, reselect, inverse. You could save selections, load selections if you save them already. You could enter edit in quick mask mode, which is basically a way to make selections by painting. So if I paint this red, not really painting it red, it's just that's the way the selection shows up because I'm in quick mask mode. You might end up in quick mask mode accidentally and be like wondering what's going on. I think, what is it, this button? What does this say? Okay, cancel. I don't know what that was. This one. This one switches to quick mask mode. It's under the foreground and background colors in your control panel. I mean in your tools panel. It looks like a dotted circle. That's a shortcut for quick mask mode. But as you can see, the painted area is actually deselected, and then the area that's not painted is selected. That's what the quick mask mode does. Don't worry about that yet. We'll do another example. Okay, filter. This is where you'll find cool filters. There's a new thing called neural filters. These are AI filters. With the neural filters, they're a little bit slower, but they'll do things like skin smoothing, makeup transfer, landscape mixer. There's some cool AI tools on their neural filters. That's what that one is for. But filter gallery, this has all your classic filters that have been in Photoshop for like over 10 years. Okay, you're basically just a bunch of different effects you can apply to the image. You can apply multiple effects on top of each other, so you don't have to just pick one. You can combine them. If you click the little plus sign here, you could create a new effect layer. You also have things like lens correction, liquify. This is liquify. Cancel to get out of there. Blur, pixelate, render, lens flare, clouds. all kinds of stuff under filter. Right, let's and then the only other one let's just talk about is window. This is where you'll be able to arrange if you have multiple files open. Maybe you've got let's open up this airplane. Come on. Okay, never mind. Photoshop doesn't want to cooperate. You know, I wish I knew what's causing this. Maybe it needs another update, but the last time I did an update, this started happening. It just freezes, or it's not really frozen. It's like almost like I clicked this, but the window that I'm supposed to look at is not popping up, and I can't even go back. Cancel. Okay. Well, can we go back? I think the only way to get back is just to close it. Sorry. It's annoying seeing me open and close it all the time, but I'm sorry, I just got some bugs in Photoshop lately. Just open it up again. Might need to end it. Hopefully this doesn't happen to you. I don't know if it's my computer or if it's just Photoshop. Okay, so let's say we have two files open. You can go to Window, Arrange. You can do two up vertical. Have them side by side like this. Maybe if you're comparing two images, might be useful. Do it this way too. Or you can go back to consolidate all to tabs. Have them tabbed instead. And this is also where you can change your workspace. So again, there's all these different workspaces. So if yours looks different than mine, it's probably because you're in a different workspace. But all the workspace is just the arrangement of your panels and stuff, which is not important. Okay, because you always have access to whatever panels you need if you go to Window and then just these are all the panels that you could possibly have. All right, all right. Let's look at the tools again. Try to go in order. So you have the move tool for moving things. You won't be able to move a background layer because the layer is locked unless you double click on it and give it a name and click OK. Then it'll let you move it, but just not do that. We have this other layer here. I can move this one because it's a regular layer. If you want to lock a layer so you don't accidentally move it, you could click this little lock button when you have the layer selected, and then it won't let you move it. And you can click it again to unlock it. Alright, the move tool will also let you, if you turn on show transform controls, let you scale and transform objects. And there's also a thing called auto select, because if you have a composition with lots of stuff, let's say create another layer here, make a little black circle, and then make a new layer and add a red circle, make a blue circle on another layer. I clicked the plus sign, created layers 2, 3, and 4. And let's say I want to move this black circle. Okay. I click on it and I want to move it, but the blue one's moving. Or I click this and I want to move it, but still the blue one. No matter where I click, the blue one is moving. That's because the blue layer is selected. Layer 4 is where I put the blue circle. And matter of fact, I'm just going to call it blue. Double clicking the layer name, you can change it. So we have black, red, and blue. So no matter which one I click here, the blue layer is still the one highlighted. Okay, that's just how it is. Unless you click auto select. If you click auto select, then it will select the layer that you clicked on. It's a preference whether you want to have auto select on all the time or not. The alternative is if you have it turned off, but you find it annoying to always have to go here and select the correct layer, you can hold the control button on the keyboard or command on a Mac. If you hold control, you'll notice the check mark temporarily appears. So control is a shortcut for auto select. Holding it when you have the move tool will auto select a layer. That's all you need to know about the move tool. We already talked about the rectangular and elliptical marquee for making circle and square selections. Um, then we have the lasso tool. This is for more freehand selection. You're probably almost never gonna use just this by itself because it'll be really hard to select things with this. That's why there's a polygonal lasso if you want to make selections with angles. If you hold the Alt button when you have this one, it will switch to the regular lasso. And then you have the magnetic lasso, which will help you go around an object like this. Kind of sticks to the edges, but again, kind of outdated nowadays because of all the new ways you can select. Now you can just use the selection brush. Wait, actually, no, there's something else. Selection brush is basically like going into edit in quick mask mode, which was this button that I clicked on earlier. Except it's making a selection, I guess, by painting like this. So the area that I'm painting is going to be selected. So as soon as I switch away from that tool, you can see that purple area switched to a selection. Which, again, I'm still on the red layer, so that's what's getting moved. But if we click this, that one gets moved. Alright, okay. Magic wand or object selection tool. So under this set, we've got the object selection, the quick selection, and magic wand. Object selection is a newer tool that is able to detect objects. It's not perfect, but you can see it highlights objects that I hover over. Does a pretty good job in this case. It works better when there's a lot of contrast between things. Let me delete these circles. So since there's like a hard edge, let me switch to this. Since there's like a clear contrast between the spaceship and the sky, dark, light, it works better. Okay. Doesn't work so good on when there's like kind of a blur between edges. it's not gonna work that great. But in this case, it works perfectly. Not perfect, because if I go here, never mind. I thought it missed an area, but it didn't. It did a pretty good job selecting the ship, the UFO. So if I have a selection and I switch to the move tool, you can see it cuts out that area. The main point of doing selections most of the time is going to be to isolate things from their layer. Like when I selected that and I have that layer selected, if I click the mask button, it will basically hide everything but my selection. And then I'm free to switch the background or whatever. So that's the object selection tool. You can also drag a box around objects that you want to select. Instead of clicking. Then you have the quick selection. Quick selection is just, you paint and it detects the closest edges and kind of grows to cover that. This works pretty good too. Again, having those high contrast edges helps. And then you have the magic wand tool. The magic wand tool basically will select areas that have similar color and tone. So if I click this white area, all the white areas get selected. If I click this blue area, similar areas get selected. It has a lot of options up here in the control panel, like the tolerance. Tolerance is basically the range of colors that you want to accept. So if it's 0, then it's only going to pick whatever is exactly the same color. Right? Only these pixels are exactly the same color. So it's not picking up things around it because the color might be slightly different, even though it's hard to tell with the naked eye. Also, I have on my monitor, I have a thing called eye saver mode, which filters out the blues. So it's even harder for me to tell if there's any difference in color here. But the higher the tolerance, let's say if I set it up to like 100, then it just selects a much wider area. You don't select some of the spaceship. If I click there, the default is gonna be 20 or 30, I think. Okay. The other options that it has this thing called contiguous. If you uncheck that, then it won't just look in this general area, it'll look throughout the whole image for this blue color or this white color. So it doesn't stick to a single area, it just checks the whole image. Cool. Alright, moving on, there's the crop tool. If you need to crop your image, switching to the crop tool will give you these little handles on the edges. You can crop your image and resize it this way. You can also move the image. Need to crop it, but I'll click the cancel button. What's this? Frame tool creates placeholder frames for images. This is new, wasn't always there. Placeholder images, kind of pointless tool, but maybe you need placeholders, who knows. There's also some other stuff here under crop tool, like the slice tool, but no, we don't need to worry about those. Okay, eyedropper is for picking up colors. Your foreground color will switch to whatever color you're clicking on with the eyedropper. So then when you paint, it'll be that color. Okay, there's pencil tool under there. Pencil tool is basically just a hard brush. It's like having the brush tool, but it's just gonna have harder edges. So it's kind of the same thing. Um, some other tools under eyedropper I'm gonna skip just because there's too many. Then we have the hot spot healing brush, remove tool, healing brush, patch tool. Okay, spot healing brush is mainly for, works better if I have a, let's go to the home page here, find a face, face with freckles. So the spot healing brush basically will remove spots. Okay, that's the spot healing brush. Doesn't just remove spots though. I mean, if you go over this eyebrow, it'll probably remove the eyebrow too. It looks at the area surrounding the brush and then it just tries to fill this area with something similar to what's surrounding it. Works better on small things though. The eyebrow's too big, so it kind of messes up. Could also use it on like strands of hair. Get rid of them. A remove tool is new. It says use this tool like a brush or lasso, brush over or circle. So it's basically for removing things. I want to scare you guys and remove her face, but that's what you could do here. It uses AI to do these things. What these new AI things are giving me an excuse to upgrade my laptop though, cause really slow. Whoa, whoa! What did that do? It didn't remove it. It replaced it with another face. I wonder if we have options. It's supposed to give you options. Window. Should be under. Where is it? I guess it's not there. But usually when you do some sort of AI edit, it gives you three options. I don't see where the options are for this one though. Let's put it back to what it was. So remove tool is supposed to remove things, but it's intelligent, so if it's not just gonna leave it with blank, it just replaced it with another face. Maybe it's better if I use it here on this guy. Hopefully it's faster because it's a small area. But yeah, magically remove them. Before, you would have to do this manually yourself with like the spot healing brush if it doesn't work, because it works sort of, you know. Spot healing brush still takes it out. Then you also have the healing brush, so without the word spot in it, just healing brush instead of spot healing brush. This one you can't just click because it'll say you need to alt click to define a source point. It means you need to alt click somewhere that you want to like reference. What do you want to replace that guy with? So maybe from the sky on that area, maybe I want to replace this area with something like this. So it's basically a spot healing brush, but you have to sample an area first, and it's not really great for that. And then there's patch tool, content aware move tool. We're not gonna go over all of these. Clone stamp. A lot like the what is it, the healing brush. Clone stamp is almost the same. You have to alt click an area to sample it, but this one just literally takes a copy of whatever you clicked on and paints it over the new area. So why is it not doing it? Let's check out our layers. What's going on here? That's weird. It's not really. Wonder why it's not doing it. Oh, because I have this selected. That's weird. Okay, should just literally take what I copied, paint it over here. So if I take this eye, alt click on it and paint it here, there's the eye. If I keep going, it'll do the nose and the fingers or whatever. Okay, history brush. Let's not worry about that. Eraser, obviously, what that does, it just erases. Try not to use an eraser. Instead, make a layer mask and just paint black what you want to erase. So that way you can paint it white and bring it back. If you use the eraser, you can't do that. It's gone forever. Unless you Control Z and undo, of course. Um, what else? Background eraser. If you need to erase the background, it's not that great. I wouldn't really use this. Works better. Again, high contrast areas. See, it's erasing the sky, but not the grass. And it's erasing it here, but not the spaceship. But it's not perfect, so it might still erase some of stuff you don't want to erase. Magic eraser just is like basically the magic wand and erase at the same time. It also has tolerance, so it's like the magic wand, but it erases the area instead of selecting it. Paintbrush, paint bucket and gradient tool. Gradient tool, if you want to create a gradient, you usually do a new layer and then click and drag to create a gradient. It will use the foreground and background color, or it might just use the foreground color in this case to transparent. But you can switch between gradient and classic gradient here. You can have like a circle gradient or different types of gradients. I usually use that if I'm trying to blend something, like maybe I create a layer mask and on the layer mask create a gradient. Let's do a regular gradient. Like basically I'm fading out the part that's black. Oh, and it's actually not using my it's not using full black here that I have selected. Instead, it's got some other, it looks like it's a gray. So sometimes you have to edit these gradients. You can click here, pick a gradient. You can edit these, but I think it has to be on classic gradient if you wanna, like if I choose gradient instead of classic gradient, it doesn't really pop up that little color picker. If I choose classic gradient and I click on this, pops up this color picker, and then I can pick my colors and the opacity. So I could add like multiple colors to my gradient. I'll do this on a new layer so you can see it. See, you've got the blue, red, white. The reason why we don't see black is because I chose white instead of black. I had black selected. Anyway, smudge tool and blur tool and sharpen tool. If you want to make a smudge, first have the layer selected, not the mask. Smudge tool, sharpen, blur. So we can blur something with the blur tool. You're not going to be able to sharpen it back to how it was. You're going to lose some detail, and if you sharpen it too much, you're going to end up with like these bright colors. You don't want to do that. I wouldn't use these tools too much. Instead, add a blur effect if you need to. You can go to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur. Better if you do it on smart objects, but we haven't talked about those. We'll talk about them later. What's this? Use option bar, adjustment brush tool. This is new. It's a new brush called the adjustment brush. Allows one to easily apply non-destructive local adjustments to an image. Okay, like what? Looks like it's set to brightness contrast. But what is it doing exactly? It's just creating a adjustment layer and basically painting everything black except for the area that I had painted. So you don't really need that tool. It's just doing something you could already do. Just doing it in one step. See, we want to do, let's say, hue saturation. Just the areas that I painted are affected. So it's just creating a adjustment layer and applying a mask to it. That's all it's doing. So don't worry about that. Dodge tool brightens an area. You can set it to affect shadows, midtones, or highlights. Right now it's set to highlights, so that's why mostly the bright areas are getting brighter. If I set it to shadows, then mostly the dark areas will try to get brighter. And then midtones, the midtones will get brighter. The burn tool does the opposite, makes things darker. Again, you can set that to shadows, highlights, or midtones. The sponge tool removes color. Actually, this one's doing the opposite. It's adding color. If you set this to desaturate, it'll remove color. If I do this enough, eventually this should turn black and white. Anyway, moving on, the pen tool lets you draw using this Bezier curve tool. If you're familiar with this tool from some other software, you might like using it. I like using it for creating smooth selections, because even with the new AI tools selecting things for you, sometimes I still need to use good old-fashioned pen tool to make selections. When I want like really crisp, smooth lines, I'll use this to draw a path around something, then convert that to a selection, and then I'll have like a nice clean edges. but you gotta be kind of good with the tool first. So first learn how to use it. Then you have the type tool. You got horizontal, vertical, some other obscure options that you probably won't need. Typing, just clicking and just clicking in an area will give you some default text, lorem ipsum. Not much you need to know about that one. Okay, the path selection, direct selection, these are only for um, if you created a shape using the pen tool and you need to like mess with these points, you can use the direct selection tool. The path selection tool will select the whole path. It's also used not just for the pen, but if you create a shape with this tool, the rectangle, ellipse, triangle tool, these shape tools also create points similar to what you create when you use the pen tool, but the pen tool is like the freehand version of these shape tools. So for these also you could use the direct selection tool and the direct um, yeah, direct selection and path selection tool. You could use those to move these paths or mess with the points on them. And yeah, I guess since it's a live shape, there's a difference between a live shape and a regular path. So if you try to mess with it, it'll give you this warning and then ask if you want to convert it. If I say no, it'll undo the change. If I say yes, it'll become now a regular path instead of a whatever that, what was it called? Live shape? Yeah, live shape. Usually the different types of layers will have little different icons on them in the layers panel. This one's a regular layer, so there's nothing on it. This one is a live shape layer, so there's this like little square on the bottom right. And then if I convert it to a regular path, I guess it still keeps the same icon. No difference. But yeah, these shapes that you create with the pen tool or the shape tools, they're a lot like what you would create in Adobe Illustrator. So they have a stroke and a fill, which you'll see in the control panel if you have these shapes selected with the shape tools or the pen tool or the path selection tool. If you have like the selection tool, the regular move tool selected, you're not going to see the options for it, even if you have that layer selected. You gotta switch to one of these tools. Then you'll see in the control panel that you can change the fill and the stroke. You can make it thicker, change it to a dotted line or solid line. Anyway, so those are vector shapes basically that you'd create in Adobe Illustrator. And I think that's it. We covered everything. So, I mean, there's still the hand tool, zoom tool, but basically we looked at all the tools. We'll have time to do this more next time. Right now it's 9:47. The sign out should already be posted. I'm gonna stop this recording.